So let's wrap two areas into this little segment here now, this little chapter in our video. I want to look at the main entrances, exits, and what you might call a foyer, as well as the sanctuary, auditorium, or other worship areas. Let's talk about these areas here for just a moment in your assessment. And again, you have the written stuff here, and it is very, very detailed. This is a great assessment report for you to follow. So I'm just talking about a few items here. Our goal for the main entrances, exits, in your foyer area is, these should be well lit, well lighted areas when the doors are unlocked, especially when the building's in use and the doors are unlocked. When people are coming in and out, when people are showing up to lock things or unlock things, we should be lighting those areas up. And when we talk about candles and decor and that kind of stuff, those should all be displayed in a safe, secure manner, not right up next to the walls or, those kind of things, especially when it comes to candles. And when we talk about items of value that we might display in our foyers or in our auditoriums, that kind of stuff, I know some of you, based on your denomination and what you do, your processes, there are things that have to be left out. But if we don't have to leave things out, I think that's a good idea. One of the first things that comes to mind for me is our musical equipment and stuff like that. That is a very common item that's stolen from churches. People break in, they walk into the foyer area or the auditorium area, and here's all this stuff, including up in the foyer on the stage, music equipment. And it's just easy pickings for them. And I know it's a pain to set up and get rid of, put it away and set it up. But realistically, many of those components, we should try to put those things away. I think about, microphones. Maybe we leave the cords out because the cords are hard to run, but we put the microphones themselves in a locked up place. Same thing with as many musical instruments that we can, or parts of those musical equipment, musical instruments that render them useless if it's not there. If it's a special plug that they have or special keys or whatever it might be, can we hide those items? And then emergency preparedness for these areas. And we're looking at the main entrance page here, the exits and foyer area. Are light controls in a protected area or disguised? We don't want people to easily be able to turn those off if possible. Is there a procedure for quickly locking down the building? And that's an important one these days. If we get word that there's a violent person running around, how could we quickly lock the doors so that nobody can get in? We want our people to go out, but how can we quickly lock those? And sometimes it just means we need to make sure somebody has a key or there's key on the inside close to those doors maybe. Realistically, we also want to look at emergency equipment. I'm dropping down to consider having a cabinet or a nearby closet with emergency equipment like flashlights, first aid kits, air horns, anything else that'd be appropriate for use in a potential emergency. And consider having enough flashlights to be able to distribute some to other people if needed. Maybe some with special needs, or certainly all of our staff, those kind of folks that are going to be involved in a process like that. Fire suppression systems, or do you have people that are trained to use fire extinguishers? There's a thought that comes to mind. We have them hanging all over the place, but are we actually training people to use those things? Are doors and hallways leading into private areas locked or kept closed? Again, we're back to that again, security. Plants, furniture, or other barriers may be useful to prevent people from standing next to large glass windows. This may be helpful in a weather emergency or if the glass is broken in any way. And realistically, how is that entrance exit being used? When is it being used? And are we taking care of it? And we come back to lighting oftentimes, security of the doors and lighting of the areas for people that are using it. In the sanctuary, our goal, the main worship area and other areas used for worship should be maintained in a safe and secure manner during and between uses. An emergency response option should be known by members. The space should be evaluated for hazards or concerns, maintenance issues, emergency exit type thing, for areas of protection as well in the event of harmful situations. And you know what those are. We're talking weather type situations. We're talking violent people, active shooters, those kinds of assessments as well. So So looking at, potential questions in the main worship area, we look at overall space, what's the occupancy? Is the layout of the space or the placement of any item likely to be a hazard during an emergency exit? Is there musical equipment stored in front of the emergency exits? Hopefully we're not sitting in front of the emergency exits or putting chairs in front of those. We don't want to do that. Light controls, those kind of things. Again, electrical outlets. Hazardous materials or hazardous situations related to steps, furniture, candles, large numbers of people, that kind of stuff. Some of it's kind of common sense. We don't want to be putting our candle displays, our lighted candles, next to the wall or a tapestry where they could fall over and catch something on fire. And by the way, depending on, I'm not saying change your rituals, but, for some of the decorations and stuff like that, they make very nice battery operated candles these days that don't even involve flames. So is that something that we might do? Are there hazards related to, and really we're looking at clear movement. Is there carpet issues, kneeling rails in the way, that kind of things? How can those things be limited or eliminated near those exits? That's what we're talking about. Use of the space. What is the function for the space? And is it safe for that kind of activity? Is there anything in the way? Is there anything that's a tripping hazard? We look over at entrances and exits. Again, it's the same kind of stuff. Are there things that are locked? Our back ways, our side rooms locked to prevent people from being enter the area and hiding in the area without being detected? Or, where we should be more aware of having our greeters and security watching out for people coming in the entrances. Well, we don't want entrances open if they don't need to be, where there's nobody there to watch for who's coming in. So we want to be looking at that. And are those emergency exits and exits lighted, marked? Is the path clear? That kind of stuff. And then we look at locks and all of those kind of things. So down to number 5, overall status of potential hazards. Are waiting areas secured to prevent access by unauthorized people? When you're talking about the choir, musicians, are there, changing areas, that kind of stuff secure? I just saw a video here a while back where the church surveillance cameras, they had a great surveillance system, showed a guy come in from an outside side door, make his way into the choir room, and he went through everybody's purses and wallets and everything and cleaned them out while the choir was in doing their music during in the auditorium during the ministry service. So, we need to be secure in those areas, secure in people's purses, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to be some fancy lock system. Some simple high school lockers that they can lock up and put their stuff in there is great. Or be able to lock the room and make sure that somebody, the last person out, is locking that before they go into the auditorium, and musical instruments, all of that kind of stuff. As you'll see in some of the other material that we provide in this session, there's all kinds of times where churches are losing those kind of things. So rooms and spaces that are near the auditorium or sanctuary, are those rooms secure, again, to prevent unauthorized people getting in there? Are those areas cause for concern that people might be able to be up to no good and conceal them in those areas? Are there fire hazards? We're hopefully doing walkthroughs after our services are over to make sure doors are locked and to make sure that there's no candles left burning, no fire hazards, those kinds of things. And so, we want to be looking at those things, making sure windows, doors are locked, all of that kind of stuff. The stage area, whether you call it a platform, a pulpit, or a stage area, whatever it is, how is it? Tripping hazards are one of the first things that come to mind. Loose carpet, cords, and I've even seen stages that are painted black, and it's hard to even see the steps, because it's all black and it all kind of blends together. So, maybe looking at some trim tape right around those corners and those steps where the eye can see the difference in those. And again, candles, all of those kind of things, clear paths, emergency exits. Do we have a clear path to the emergency exit for our choir, our musicians, for our leaders? All of those kind of things are important, and And then you get to, number 8 here, offering and collections, offerings. We're picking those kind of things up. Do you have a protocol for collecting that money and removing it from the auditorium and counting it? And this should be, a couple of people should be involved in this process. So oftentimes we'll have multiple ushers that collect the money because they're on different rows as they go down through the church. And then is your process, whether we take it back up to our leader for blessing it, or we just take it right out, then who's counting it? Hopefully you have a couple of folks that are counting it, a couple of folks that are dropping it, wherever you drop it in the church office. And, we should be looking at that, different routes, even going from the auditorium, walking over to the office. Maybe sometimes we go out this door when we take the offering to the office, and other times we go out this other door over here, just so we change it up in case somebody's, happens to be watching us. That kind of stuff becomes very important. So, and the same, honestly, the same when we take money to the bank and that kind of stuff. We should do it at different times. On Monday or whatever that day looks like, we should have different times, not always at 10:30. On Monday morning, we should do 11:30 sometimes, maybe 1 o'clock sometimes, and we should take different routes to the bank. And, special activities, whether it's baptismals or communion, whatever that is there any hazards? If we're turning the lights down for a special service or something, is there any kind of tripping hazards? Or maybe we only take the lights so far, or are there areas where we maybe need to install some small low light items just to make sure that if anybody gets up and needs to go to the restroom or something, that they have a little bit of light in that area where the floor changes from carpet to tile or vice versa, or whatever that looks like. So emergency preparedness, is there an emergency plan that we can know, especially as leaders, in case there's violence or in case there's some sort of an emergency? Is there somebody present that can provide CPR or provide guidance in different areas for folks? Designated helpers, designated leaders, those kind of things. And our ushers there to help people in and out, observe things that are going on, like a security situation. And we want to be looking at those different kind of things. What can we do? And we're really looking at this so far, and we'll have more added to this section, but we're really looking at this so far. It starts coming down to hazards for tripping, keeping our buildings open, taking care of the landscape, but making sure that we can see windows and doors easily, that areas are lighted, areas, walkways, parking lots are clean, things are cut back, trimmed. It kind of becomes a common theme here, but we're just moving to different areas of the church. And are we prepared for things? As this section, the emergency preparedness section, are we prepared for stuff that might happen? Do we have a plan? Do we have a person that's in charge of that stuff that can help if something goes wrong? And for some of us, that means then we probably need a couple of those folks, because maybe they're not at every service or they take vacation time. So we need a backup to that. It doesn't have to be an elaborate plan. This stuff doesn't have to be elaborate. It has a common theme as we're going through this stuff. And so we just need to take care of some of the basics, make sure we have the plans, make sure we have a person at least that knows this stuff or that's in charge of this stuff. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We just do the best that we can in these situations. And every once in a while, it'd be nice to bring somebody in, bring a fire marshal in to take a look, or if they're not automatically stopping by, or get a crime prevention officer to swing by, or make an appointment with them so that they can have a look and also give us some advice or kind of an exam of how we've been doing, because we've been using our assessment sheet here. And so we've been working on that for a while. So let's bring them in and ask them to do an evaluation, kind of a checkup, a grading of how we're doing so far, and maybe give us some more advice based on their experience. And they're going to give you different opinions. You bring a different person in, they'll give you different opinions than the last person based on their experience. But we just put all this together, and it helps us improve our safety.